Hello. So, what's on my mind lately about relationships that I wanted to jump on this live and share about is the unique the issues that come up in modern day long-term monogamous relationships. So this, if you're tuning in, this is for my people who are interested in, you're dating in a serious manner, you're likely already with someone where you're dating seriously, or you're already in a relationship, you're considering marriage, you already are married, and it's monogamous. So that's what I'm speaking to. There are other ways of being in a relationship, and I'm passionate about conscious monogamy. And the reason that is because I think there's something unique that can only be found inside of, in my experience, inside of long-term commitment with one person. That doesn't mean it can't be found in other ways, but in my experience, when you're with one person, there's just like specific challenges and specific beautiful things that arise with that one-on-one commitment exclusive to two people. And so some of the challenges these days is women who are on the personal development path, the spiritual path, are either so growth-oriented themselves that they've become kind of anti-partner unwittingly. Like they become so individual, so independent, so self-dependent that there's no room for interdependence, right? That they can provide for themselves in pretty much all the ways, or they can get it met in community and with their friends. So it's like, why do I even need a partner? So that's one thing, and I'll share why that's problematic, if it's not already obvious, because some people they're like, what's the problem? Great, I don't need a partner. That might even be the goal, is like get to a place where you're so self-sovereign that you don't need a partner. That's one way, that's one perspective, but yeah, I'll speak to the limitation in that in a moment. And the other option would be maybe that's not the case for you, or you don't feel necessarily like, I don't need a partner. Who needs a partner? I can meet all my own needs by myself. But you might find like that you have to date for a really long time, or like to find someone who's a match for you because your standards are so high, right? Because you go so deep in your own self-development spiritually and in all the ways that it's really hard to meet a match, like someone who's like an equal, like a mirror equal to you. And there's a lens that you can take, that you could just keep dating and dating and dating until you find the person who happens to be the exact match for you, and that can occur. However, I feel like there's so much richness that's lost in not actually discovering what's the potential inside of the relationship that you are in, or the person that you are dating. Now this is assuming a couple things: that the person you are dating or in relationship in, there's already a lot of love, like there's already a lot of mutual respect, mutual affection. There's not really like red flags of personality disorders or abusive behaviors happening. Okay, so this is talking in pretty moderately healthy, tricky, how do we define healthy, but I'm attempting to do that here. So assuming you're in a moderately healthy relationship, you might be like, wow, my partner might not be as into these workshops that I go to, or they don't really want to read the books that I'm reading about relationships or personal development in general. They don't have the same kind of language for that as you. The way that you think or see the world spiritually might be different. So you might be like, well, how the heck is this going to work if we have different ways of being in a sense, right? So like different, in a way, it's different worldviews. And this was really something I had to contend with my partner, with my husband. So what I have come to realize is that there's a lot more that you have in common than you probably realize. It's just that it doesn't look the way you think it should look. So it becomes a journey of learning that your partner is growth-oriented, spiritually oriented, in a way that looks different than you. And can you accept that? And that it really becomes a it all comes back to you. That's just why, the work I do with couples, I primarily work with one person, because it only takes one person to make the difference. And it's usually the person that's personal growth oriented or spiritually oriented that comes across my work, because they're seeking it, because they're seekers, right? And so I work with that one partner to, in a lot of levels, right? We look at many, many things. So if it's the partner that I'm talking about right now who feels, or spiritually growth oriented, but their partner is not, then we look at, where do you already overlap, and can you accept it, as opposed to push it away, like, oh, they don't use the language I use, or they're not doing the exercises that I'm bringing home. Like, they're naturally already in communication with you. Like, you don't need more communication strategies. It's being in relationship with the communication that is provided for you, and having that work for you, like working with what's in front of you, as opposed to wishing it were different. It's a total game changer, because you either you're always feeling like something's wrong, and I need to teach my partner something and get them to get their shit together, right? To like make this relationship work, or I have to compromise myself. That's what it usually feels like, and that doesn't feel good for anyone. No one wants to compromise themselves, and no one wants to convince their partner of anything, or have to be convinced or forced or manipulated, or all those things. Even if you try to do it in nice ways, like, it never feels good for either party. So can you actually see where you are already getting what you want? And this is where it's like, huh? Like, what do you mean I'm already getting what I want? Because it's our attention unwittingly becomes focused on everything that we're not getting in the relationship, right? This is totally normal. This is what happens. So you need to check in, like, what is already actually working for me around this complaint in particular. Like, there are things that already work in the relationship that you don't have complaints around. Great, focus on that, and that helps nourish the relationship. But also look at what works for you in the relationship around your complaint. So, if I want deeper conversations with my spouse, I'll start to notice that for me, in my relationship, if I text him something that's on my mind and he has time and space around responding, that his response is always so much sweeter and deeper than if I try to drag him into a conversation when he gets home from work, or even on our free time together. You might think, well, this should be an optimal time for this person to be available to talk to me because it's their free time. Maybe, and sometimes that does work. But also just look at how your partner naturally already meets you halfway. So I started noticing, wow, my husband's really good at sending me messages that are really sensitive and beautiful and loving. And I'm totally making that not okay or not enough. Because he's not showing up in the conversation. I wish he would sit down and look me in the eyes. I was turning my back to the intimacy he was offering me. And it's just so silly, right? So, but believe it or not, you can literally spend years not getting that. I know I did. So 8 years with my spouse, 4 years married, it's and I'm a smart person, pretty evolved, paying attention, aware, but sometimes it becomes weaponized. So for my friends out there who are, personal growth oriented or spiritually oriented, this can become weaponized against your partner, all of your growth and your knowledge and your intuition and la 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 la. Because then you start not being able to see how your partner's already providing the intimacy that you're seeking. There's another piece to it, which is oftentimes the intimacy that you're seeking. I found this for me too. There's a level that I was unable to be in myself, which was hard for me to even think was a possibility at first, because I'm I go deep. I do lots of deep work on myself. So I was I am so intimate with myself. But there's always something we don't want to look at. There's always the thing that we're if I look there, that hurts too much. If I look there, that's too tender. And that's where, for me, I had, getting championed with my mentor made all the world of difference for me, because some things are really too intense to face alone. Ultimately, you are doing it alone. No one can do it for you. But having someone holding you while you look at something that makes your heart want to break. I'm trying to think of an example. well, I mean, the last time I had a conversation with my spouse that felt really confronting, I had to be willing to look at where I was unwilling to take myself to the next level in my life. And what that meant was I had to be really willing to potentially lose the relationship or dissolve our relationship the way it was, me and in my marriage. And that's really terrifying. And I was like, I don't want to look there. I'll look everywhere else, but I'll try anything else, but I don't want to have to dissolve my relationship. And I'll have to tell you, I've done it more than once now, dissolved my marriage to create it anew. And that takes a willingness to be able to stand in my own desires and validate myself without needing my partner to validate what I want. And to be okay with my partner saying, I don't know if I can meet you there. Or I can meet you there, but it would look like this. And so it's not going to look like how you ideally want it to look or sound. Sometimes it will, right? And sometimes it won't. And so I think the reason why I would shy away from those conversations is because I didn't know if I could be with whatever response my spouse had. I couldn't be with his, I don't know, or can it look like something else? Like, sure, but can we do this a little differently? Like, I was just too scared of that because I was too scared to lose the relationship and too scared to be alone. And that's my stuff, right? But then we spend so much time looking at our partner like, my partner should be doing all these things, or they shouldn't be doing this, and we lose where it's actually on us, right? So I said I would circle back to the other person who might be tuning into this. It might be the person who's just like really self-dependent and like, I don't need a partner. You're going to miss out on all of the richness that happens only in partnership, especially romantic partnership, because there's a level of intimacy. Of course, you can get it in community and friends, but it's different. It's different when you're romantically entangled, because there's other hormonal things at play. Your biology is at play. Your sexual selections at play. I think I said hormones. Like, there's a lot more at play inside of romantic relationships. So there's a lot more richness for what can be created out of that kind of relating. It probably seems obvious, but people who are so independent kind of like forget that's possible, and that they're missing out if they think that they don't need a partner. So it's not needing a partner from neediness. Like, you are already whole and complete as a person, yes, and there's something that can be created inside of romantic partnership that can only be created in romantic partnership, that can't be created elsewhere in other ways. So whether you like that or not, then you get to look at why you hate the idea of having a partner so much. And, what's so bad about other people and being in romantic partnerships? Where are you wounded around romance and, fear of being let down or fear of being hurt? Yeah, it's going to happen. You're going to be let down and you're going to be hurt. Like, that's part of the game. And so avoiding that by being hyper individual is robbing yourself of the richness and fortitude that comes when you confront being disappointed in your partnership, and you confront being hurt and hurting them and disappointing them. Like, it's going to happen both ways. I'm so passionate about relationships because they're so beautiful. There's so much richness, unlike any other relationship we can have. So yeah, so if you're tuning in, I hope that this helps. And if you're feeling like you are one of those growth or spiritually oriented people and you're worried that your partner's too different from you, I promise that there's more available that you're turning your back to, that you're not allowing yourself, what I call it, being ravished by life, being ravished by your relationship, being open to receiving what your partner's offering, as opposed to being like, no, that's not good enough. It should look like this. And so that's the first step, really, that's how you create intimacy. That's how you create your own self-validation, and your own sense of self-respect, that you can stand for your own desires without it's not about an ultimatum. It's just sharing genuinely, like, this is what's true for me. And then hearing where they want to meet you in that, and accepting where they want to meet you in that, or, receiving their counter offer. Sometimes they might not be able to meet you in that. And then when you dissolve the relationship, it's not to recreate it, it's to dissolve it and permanently separate. And maybe your love takes a different form, which is also a beautiful lesson to have, right? Is sometimes we get so attached to the form of our relationships, we're not willing for the form to change. But more often than not, what I've discovered is when two people really love each other and are committed to each other, but are just having some of these issues around worldviews or like differences in, as long as they're both partners are willing to see where we do meet and where do we want to put our energy, like, are we both up for like figuring this out essentially? Like, are we both up for like, what does the next level of a relationship look like? What would that look like, for my partner? And he gets to decide for himself. Like, I'm not going to force him. But I will stand for the intimacy that I want to have. And I know how to turn towards the relationship and get an intimacy that I used to resist, that he was offering. So, but it does take, eventually both partners have to be like, yes, like, let's figure this out together. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know how we're going to do it even sometimes. I might request something from my partner. He's like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's figure it out together. So it's not about like your partner being like, yes, I know how to do that, and I'm going to give you everything you're asking for. No. And you'll figure it out together. Plus, there's ways that you can also get your own needs met, which I've talked about before. Like, not all of your needs should be getting met inside of your romantic partnership. So there's something unique to romantic partnership, of course, but you can't get all of your needs met there. So I think we get that too, and we expect our partner to meet all our needs. So it's complex. Relationships are really complex, but I've been studying them for a while inside my own marriage. But even before I got married, I've been doing this work. And yeah, so that's how you build intimacy, and then that's how you end up having hotter sex, because hotter sex comes from deeper intimacy, not just as an absolute measure, like you can have hot sex without intimacy for sure, but sustainably, right? Like in a long-term commitment, when you're with somebody for multiple years, if you don't have that mutual respect, that mutual love, that depth of honesty, if you're minimizing parts of your truth, if they're minimizing parts of their truth to make the relationship work, but you're hiding, that's going to erode your self-respect and your respect for your partner, because you can feel it. And that's what limits intimacy, and that's what limits passion ultimately, right? Sustainable passion. So beyond this whole conversation of intimacy and passion, we get into like, what's our shared purpose as a couple? But that's like the next level, right? Now, there are some people that are on the personal development, spiritual path who are looking to get into a partnership right away, who's like, okay, this partner is already like right on my level, and we're going to have this shared vision, and like, we're going to go conquer the world as this power couple. Again, you could date around and wait for that person who's like right on the level with you, who has the same pretty much development of their sexuality, their spirituality, their psychological well-being and worldviews. You could date around and wait for that. It's possible, but I advocate for the richness of being with the person that you love and creating that together, as long as both parties are willing. Now, it's the funny paradoxical thing about intimacy is sometimes intimacy means that your paths are parallel, and sometimes your paths like come really close together, and you're like, we are like really in this together, and like we're on the same page, and we both like see everything together. And sometimes it happens for me and my spouse, for sure. And then sometimes we're like further apart, and we're like, I'm doing my thing and he's doing his thing, but we can still maintain that intimacy or feeling of like deeply seen and cherished and respected and loved, even when our lanes are further apart. And I think people think, oh, our lanes are further apart, there's something wrong. But there's nothing wrong. It's just like you're choosing to do life parallel with each other. And eventually, the better you get at doing all of this, that's when you start to develop more of a shared purpose, and you get to bring those parallel lines closer together. But some people try to force that shared purpose too soon, like demanding, like, I'm on the personal development path, so my partner needs to be like right on the same level with me, and we should be able to share a purpose right from the get-go, and it should just be like, otherwise they're not the right person for me. Okay, if that's what you want to do and you want to keep dating around and around until you meet someone who is that level, and that, again, valid option. But I do think there's some fallacy and fantasy in that, and like it's easier if you can meet someone who's like right at the same level as you, great. And if you meet someone that you really like love and are attracted to and enjoy being with, and it's a moderately healthy relationship, then you can create that inside of your relationship, and there's so much richness in creating that as like, we're in this together. Let's figure this out together. Sometimes our paths might be like a little wider. Sometimes we're going to be closer together. But there's always this, the real intimacy isn't dependent on how wide or close the parallel lanes are. It's how connected you are regardless of how wide your parallel paths are taking, if that makes sense. I hope this makes sense. Yeah, because I think people just don't identify that is intimacy. But intimacy doesn't always mean you're super, super close. It means that you feel connected, you see the other, you respect and love each other, and you're committed to each other no matter what, without losing yourself or compromising yourself, or without forcing your partner to be someone they're not. So that's where true intimacy is. And so I am a big advocate of loving the one you're with, and you, like, it'll take confronting yourself and asking, like, you might have to ask some hard questions or share some challenging things that might dissolve the relationship. However, then you have the opportunity, based on your partner's response, to recreate your relationship. You get to marry your partner more than once. You get to recreate who you are with each other. But you have to be willing to have that conversation and be willing for your partner to be like, I don't know if I can do that, or I won't do that. And then you do dissolve the relationship, and then you're separate. But ultimately, it's the most loving thing. Like, that's the most intimacy you can have, is to have the truth between the two of you. If you don't have the truth between the two of you, then your relationship's not built on truth. It's built on fantasy, right? So are you willing to, but you have to, this is the tricky part, is when most people go into like this whole ultimatum thing of like, can you meet me halfway? Or like, can you just level up already? And it's just like, who's going to say yes to that? Right? So there's like beautiful ways to invite someone into up-leveling the next level in your relationship that makes them feel really wanted, loved, and accepted as they are, and also inviting them into their next level of their maturity with you inside of the container of your relationship. And it's a co-created recreation of how you want your marriage to look. It's not just you bossing it around. You get to just say, what would the next level look like for you? Like, what would that feel like for your partner? And so then it becomes really yummy for both people. Okay, so that's been on my mind, but I just wanted to share that for people who are in relationships, seriously dating, or already, married or engaged, all those things. You can have the intimacy you want. You can have the passion you want, even if you're together for years. In fact, I think that long-term commitment in itself is how we create deep intimacy, and how we actually get the passion and the hot sex and all that. That's sustainable, is being willing to stay in the crucible of the marriage. And the crucible is intense, and it requires honesty, and it requires the ability to stand on your own 2 feet and be anchored to yourself regardless of what your partner says, and also inviting them in so lovingly that they don't feel like it's an ultimatum, or they don't feel like they're not enough for you. So it is a ninja dance to do that well. And so that's what I support people in doing, because I figured that out primarily by myself. And then I had some mentorship at the end that really, I wish I had had it sooner, because it really helped me be stronger, because I had support, right? As opposed to like trying to do it all by myself. It's just really, it's asking a lot, especially when we're already balancing a lot in our lives, not just our relationships, right? So being championed, allowing someone to champion you, is really an act of self-love. It's like, I love myself enough to give myself the support, and for someone to like champion me and like hold space for me as I go do this ninja stuff inside my relationship. So, plus all the ninja skills that I've learned took like 8 years. So it depends how long you want to, maybe you'll figure it out faster than me, but I'm a pretty quick learn, so a quick study. So if you're interested in learning these ninja skills on a faster gradient, not having to, struggle for 8 years and have unnecessary conflict and unnecessary disconnection, and if you want to have the hotter sex faster, the deeper intimacy faster, the sweetness faster, without having to change yourself or change your partner, then I recommend check out working with me. I offer Lover, which is a 4-month incubator, and it's an opportunity to have these deep conversations, be coached by me. I ask really good questions, and to also learn these ninja skills and how to be in the crucible and the sanctuary of marriage. Sanctuary is the part we all love, which just feels like sweet and comfortable and yummy, but often where our codependence lies if we don't know how to do it well. So what I know is that being in the sanctuary in a very conscious way without being codependent and being interdependent inside of the sanctuary requires being willing to be in the crucible and being in the crucible well. And that's what I've been talking about. So if this is valuable, go ahead and put some questions or comments in the comments below, and I'll put a link to learn more about, to learn more about Lover, you're actually just going to PM me. I'm not actually going to give you a link. I'm going to chat with you first and just see if it's a good match, because I know, who this program works best for and who it doesn't work well for, so I don't accept everyone into my programs to work with me. But we'll chat and we'll see if we're a good fit, and then we'll take the next steps of the application process from there. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope it was helpful. And I'm wishing you all the love, ravishment, passion, and intimacy that you deserve and that are right there at your fingertips. They're right there for you. And it's just being able to cultivate them and see them and believe in them and be championed along the way. All right, thanks for tuning in, everyone, and have a beautiful rest of your weekend.